are here before you today to commemorate the lives lost here in Atlanta 3 years ago. But we also know that what was lost was more than just lives. It was family members, mothers, sisters, friends, colleagues, and our community. While we didn't know you at the time, the pain of this event, your pain, reached across the country. Mom and I watched from NYC in shock as the news unfolded, and we were heartbroken to learn that an evil act had claimed lives. We hardly had a moment to realize what was happening to our AAPI community when less than 2 weeks later, Mom was on the news for her own anti-Asian hate attack. As we stand together today, what do we share? I think we can all agree that March 2021 was filled with tears. And a chapter of our lives was abruptly shut, leading to a new, damaged beginning. Even with what we've lived through in these 3 years we share, I can only imagine your pain to a point, because my mother is still here, and I will never take that for granted. I have no words, so I give you me and my voice to make sure that this pain and the unspoken pain of so many others that have experienced and lost to the hands of hate do not pass through history in vain. That we remember not the sadness that has occurred, but remember the spirit of the community that gathered. And look around. Do you know the person on either side of you? Do you know what you all share? A reason for coming out tonight, a beautiful Saturday night, sharing it with each other. You are in a room of people that want humanity, love, compassion for one another. You are who I am honored to spend my Saturday night with. Right, Mom? Recently, Mom and I closed a chapter, and last month we faced Mom's attacker sentencing. She delivered her impact statement for the court record, making it the first time she was able to share all of the details of her story in 3 years. 3 years of holding every detail close in mind, not knowing when we would be summoned to call upon these painful memories in court. And if I do say so myself, Mom did a fantastic job making sure that everyone in that courtroom knew what she endured and how it had changed her, our community's lives. How it has shaped both our fears, but also our strength, endurance, and resilience. The attacker, Mr. Elliott, apologized for what he had done and admitted it was wrong. I'm honestly still processing how I completely feel about it. I wanted to hate him, but by the end of his childlike apology, I felt sorry for him. Who can murder their own mother and mentally be okay to be let out of prison? And this is where we share another connection. Both of our attackers point to mental illness. These are people that should be getting help or shouldn't be out on the streets. Damaged individuals that our loved ones were unlucky to meet on their bad day. Mental illness is an epidemic in our country, and a 2023 poll noted that 90% of Americans feel that we are in a mental health crisis. And they're right. A Health Forum report also notes that 38% more people are in mental health care since the onset of the pandemic than before. So this is where I point a finger back at us, community. Why are we 3 to 4 times less likely to seek mental health services? Why is it that only 8.6% of Asian Americans sought any type of mental health services, 10 points behind the national general average? Now I ask you, and just think about the answer to yourself, how closely are you paying attention to your mental health? Because you're here, I know you have the capacity to feel deeply and care about something. Are you caring for yourself? It's been a long 3 years. Are we talking to one another? Are we sharing our stories? Are we taking up space and being heard? Are we reporting? Are we resting? From what I've picked up on in my accidental activism in this time is that the answer is not a definitive yes or no. It lies somewhere in between. But let's agree that with each day, we will push forward to get closer to that yes. So tonight, we invite you to share your stories with us. But to make it a little easier, we'll go first. So please welcome my mom, Vilma Kari씨. She shares her story.
Thank you, everyone. My story begins on a Monday morning of March 29, 2021, exactly 13 days after this tragic event here in Atlanta. I was visiting my cousin's apartment on West 43rd Street near Times Square when I decided to look up a church and attend a noon mass in the neighborhood before heading home. The church I had Googled was one avenue and one street over. I had the option of taking one of two routes to get there. The one I chose almost immediately put me in my attacker, Brandon-Elliott's path. I had just strolled a few steps from my cousin's residence when I saw Mr. Elliott walking towards me and heard him yell, "F you, Asian, you don't belong here." And then he kicked me. I fell on the ground. I could feel the porous, rough texture of cement and the equally rough impact of the bottom of his shoe repeatedly on my head. Back and forth, pain, shock, and confusion radiated through my body. It felt like an eternity. In that moment, my life flashed before me. I wasn't ready to die, and I didn't understand why he was doing this to me. I tried to open my mouth to scream, to plead with him to stop, but I could not. Just when I thought this might be my end, I heard another voice, a savior, the only person who came to my rescue. "Hey man, what are you doing?" My attacker was distracted. I tried to move, to get away, but the radiating pain from all over my body continued, and I knew that if his attention turned back to me, I wouldn't be able to run. I prayed that he would not resume his attack. As I lay on the ground, I saw my attacker walk towards the Good Samaritan. I was not aware at the time, but Mr. Elliott was carrying a knife. This part of the story could have ended very differently. It took me a moment to understand what had just transpired. I saw my phone a few feet away and crawled to it. I wanted to call 911. I summoned all my strength to get up. Then I saw two men in black suits. They asked me how I was, but my first response was to implore them, "Could you please take a picture of that man?" I wanted to capture the moment so I have evidence. By then, Mr. Elliott was walking away with his back to us. The two men just looked at him and did not do anything. They asked me to go inside the building, but before I could take a step, a police patrol car arrived on the scene. Later, I found out that there was no official 911 call. It was just by chance that a patrol car had rolled down the street and came upon the scene. I begged the police, "Please, I need an ambulance. I have to go to the emergency room." I was so worried about internal bleeding and had no idea what the extent of my injuries were. They asked me to get in the car. I needed assistance. I was not okay. As I moved towards the car, I felt excruciating pain in my body every time I took a step. I asked one of the police officers to help me, while the other went to ask questions to the men. Then the police officers drove me around the block a few times in the hope that I could still spot my attacker, Mr. Elliott, from among the crowd in Times Square. I had no success. As the time passed, the fears of internal bleeding unsettled me. Would I make it to the hospital in time to survive this? I pushed aside the thoughts and called my daughter, who was at work. When she did not initially answer my call, I sent her text, "Call me, I've been attacked." She jumped off her meeting and we made a plan to meet at the hospital where the ambulance was taking me. In the emergency room, I feared my death. My only thought was for God to spare my life. I was surrounded by nurses, doctors, EMTs, police officers, other patients, but yet I felt alone, cold, scared, confused. My daughter arrived as the barrage of questions towards me continued. When I repeated the words that Mr. Elliott yelled at me prior to being attacked, I saw eyebrows raised. We were then told to wait. Hate Crimes Task Force would be coming to speak with us. Then the questions continued. Even while I was still being wheeled from one examination room to another, again and again, I repeated my story while waiting to know if I would even be okay. Would I live to tell it again tomorrow? Finally, the police and detectives left. My daughter sat by my side, assuming the role of my guardian.